comments. I think it on an island this size, an All-Ireland forum to discuss something as severe as this is absolutely necessary. And just maybe interjecting, I was interested to hear you say when you talked about the border issue that the Greenland model would result in a hard border between Scotland and England. Whenever we've been told here that there won't be a hard border if the North was to leave. So, just if you could maybe elaborate a wee bit more on that and elaborate a bit more on the Good Friday Agreement aspect and problems that that flags up. It's an internationally agreed document that's very important in terms of protections and rights for citizens here in the North. So, a bit more impact on that. And also, you kind of answered my question. A lot of the talk is as if this has happened. One of your options is the status quo. That is a possibility. You talked about the legal challenges. They also could result in many different things. And also, the issue for us is to get a solution to this referendum problem that best suits the citizens in the North, based on the fact that the majority of citizens in the North voted to remain, based on the fact that most studies, even within your own document, you were pinpointing studies that show the economic disaster that an exit would have for the North. So, I think that the conversation point or the way we come at this has a big bearing on it. That people don't have their minds closed to certain solutions. That if we're talking about bespoke solutions, then let's talk about bespoke solutions that could result. From our point of view, as an elected representative, in the interest of the people that I serve, and that could result in many different things. One of which is that the North remains, that it has closer ties with regard to the South. And that all of the possibilities that we have, that we maybe could come out of this even in a better solution.
Okay, plenty of questions there. I think. Okay, you picked up on the term hard border.
Yeah.
I think what's been interesting over the last 3 months or so is the way in which the language is moving around the border and definitions of what is hard. I think the various different arrangements which could be put in place for a UK outside the EU, as they affect Northern Ireland, will all have implications for the border. Unless the UK stays in the EU, or Northern Ireland in some way stays in the EU, there will be border controls of some description, or at least the need for a capacity to control that border. If you've not got the free movement of workers, and you've got hard immigration controls, that's going to have some implication for the border. On trade, if you're outside the customs union, then there needs to be the capacity to control or to collect the taxes, to monitor the quotas, to address the rules of origin issue. Even if you are in the single market and you are in the customs union, and no state has achieved that status, agriculture is still excluded. No non-member state of the European Union has with the EU free trade in agricultural products. So even if the UK is out, even if we are a part of the single market and remain part of the customs union, currently there would still be controls on the amount of agricultural produce moving across that international border with the EU. And there would also be quotas, and some of those tariffs are exceptionally high. Okay, so that's, I think we need to be fully aware of that. Now, I think one of the issues we've got around the border is the language in London at the moment seems to be moving more and more towards simply having some sort of free trade agreement with the EU, stepping outside the customs union and not being part of the single market. To my mind, that has huge challenges for us in terms of the border on this island. And I don't think we can get away from that fact. I know people tried to skirt it, avoid it in the context of the referendum debate, but it is real. Because I think that there are issues there. How you solve them, I think, is open to question. I think we need to come up with creative solutions. Can one consider of an all-island agricultural market? Can one think of different regimes which have already existed where the island is treated as a whole. I think if someone pointed out to you recently, if we think back to Foot and Mouth, treated as one particular area. So it's looking at what arrangements can be placed. And I think this is where I'd also encourage thinking around what other arrangements the EU has in place with non-member states. So, for example, one recently noted was Liechtenstein is in a customs union with Switzerland, but it's in the single market with the EU. Two regimes which shouldn't necessarily be compatible, but they've managed to work. So I think that, to me, suggests that if we can come up with ideas, there may be solutions to the particular situation we face here. On the Good Friday Agreement, I'm not the best placed person to engage on that. I leave that more to lawyer colleagues. But I think when we look at the principle of consent, which is so integral to the outworkings of the GFA, that raises questions about the extent to which consent to any change in the current status should be sought from and secured from Northern Ireland, and indeed in terms of broader issues about devolution in terms of the Civil Convention in Scotland, before any further decisions are taken. I think it's also worth noting at the moment that whereas the discussion is around what consent, what parliamentary procedure needs to be put in place for the triggering of Article 50, we haven't yet got on to the question of what sort of legislative endorsement you would need of the decision to actually lead, which would follow, and also the new relationships which are put in place. I think there's further work to be done around that. Possibility of the status quo continuing. Very difficult to say at the moment, because this is a highly politically charged process. It is a highly complex process, the extent of which I don't think anybody has really worked out. And we do not know where we're going to be in 2 years' time in terms of how people might react to the various options available for the UK outside the EU, and how that might affect public opinion and political opinion as well. On a bespoke arrangement for Northern Ireland, I think a good case could be made to say that for political, geographical reasons, there are particular challenges which demand a bespoke arrangement within the context of a UK-wide arrangement. I think, though, that comes back to my earlier point, that that's going to be for us to be identifying what the issues are and what the potential solutions are, and to be making sure that those are on the agenda of all those involved in various different negotiations, and they're fully aware of them. Okay.
Philip McGuigan.
Can I ask the Minister to make an assessment of the Make the Call campaign taken forward in conjunction with the Older People's Commissioner?
I was able to launch this event in Lagan Valley Island in Lisburn, and we had the Older Commissioner with us to join at that launch, because obviously he has an important role to play, and he recognises, as I do, the issue around older people having the confidence to make the call. But this has been successful, and so for older people especially, there are benefits there that you are entitled to and that you're not claiming for, and that there should be no shame whatsoever attached to those individuals who have worked all their lives and often now in the twilight years need to get that support, and it's only but right that this campaign receives our support.
McGuigan.
Can I thank the Minister for his answers thus far and his praise for the local Causeway Coast and Glens Council, of which I was recently a member. Just given the importance that the Minister has placed on the Dark Hedges as an environmental and tourism attraction, how does he envisage the long-term management, given the cross-cutting nature of his department, other departments, the local Heritage Trust, the Tree Preservation and the Council? Who does he envisage taking the lead in terms of future management?
I'll be honest with you, and say that we haven't yet to give some specific thought as to how that might be done. Obviously, there are a lot of actors involved, involved in this, from the Preservation Trust, the Council, Tourism, NI, local stakeholders involved in it. So I think that is part of the conversation which Mr. Storey alluded to, which has already started to take place and has happened on the ground at the Dark Hedges, about what I think our first priority has got to be preserving the site. And then I think there's a temptation, to be completely honest, perhaps on our side and tourism side of things, is just trying to market these and not necessarily thinking about the environmental impact. That is incredibly important to me. As I said before, there's nothing to market if they're not there in the future, so we've got to look after them first and foremost. That's where we would look to the Preservation Trust and to lead in terms of that and show us the best way forward in regards to preserve the asset as an asset. And then from a tourism perspective, we'd be very, very happy to step in. I think there is much more that we can do at the Dark Hedges. I know that the hotel and the resort beside it is developing further, and I think they see huge opportunities. In fact, I think they're rebranding to call themselves the Dark Hedges Resort. So there's huge opportunities. We will work very, very closely with them to do that. But I do look to colleagues in the Environment Agency. I look to colleagues in Transport NI to ensure that we can preserve the asset first and foremost, and then it is very much over to us in combination with the local council and the Preservation Trust to ensure that the asset is marketed in a way that can benefit everybody, but also in a sympathetic way.
Sir Philip McGuigan, I call Philip McGuigan.
Gurmilgut, last can collier, August Kid Golsis, as Fager Alium, is honoured to have a glorch, Dunkid sa channel for topic Shaw, August is privilege, do have a gobber, son Dini Antrim Hui. Gurmilgut, last can collier. It's been a while, I think 10 years in fact, since I last spoke in this chamber. So just at the beginning of my contribution today, can I say and reiterate that it's a great honour and privilege to be allowed to represent the citizens of North Antrim, and along with my Sinn Féin team, I hope to do it well. Whether you live in Kerry Glen or Glenravel Glen, Ballintoy, Ballybogie, Dunloy or Dervick, Cloney or Clough, Ballycastle or Bruckshean, and everywhere in between, my office door will be open. I want to thank my old sparring partner, Mervyn Storey, from our days in Ballymoney Borough Council, for bringing this debate to the House, and I'm delighted to be reunited with Mervyn again and look forward to working constructively with him and all the other North Antrim members on behalf of the people that we serve. The future of healthcare provision in North Antrim is one such important issue for those citizens. Indeed, it's probably the most important issue. And nobody could underestimate the challenges that this brings to the Minister, and I'm delighted that the Minister is here for this contribution. So the challenges for the Minister, the Northern Health and Social Care Trust, and all healthcare providers. And just before continuing, can I also thank the work of those who work in the healthcare profession for their selfless service and excellent care. And in my new role now, I hope to work positively with the management of the Northern Health and Social Care Trust and its staff to ensure the health and well-being needs of all my constituents are met. In my 3 short weeks in this role, I have already received representations from a number of constituents covering waiting times for referrals and other specific treatment issues, so I am acutely aware of the current pressures facing citizens requiring treatment, and in turn the onus that this puts on the health service and on health service staff. I welcome the words of the Minister in this chamber last week in another health-related debate when she said, I wish to reiterate that tackling excessive waiting times is high on my agenda for delivering improvements in the health service. I want to assure patients and their families again that long waiting times are completely unacceptable to me, and that I understand the worry and stress that people feel when they are waiting to hear when they will be seen. And who couldn't agree with that? North Antrim is a largely rural constituency covering the large geographical area, including Rathlin Island, and this in itself throws up challenges of travelling time, of access to services, of emergency response times and much more. Ambulance response times are a genuine concern in life-threatening situations for people living in the Glens and other remote geographical locations in North Antrim, and this aspect needs careful consideration in any future plans for the health service. Constituents of North Antrim, as has already been said, are currently served by 2 acute hospitals, the Causeway and Coleraine and Antrim Area Hospital, and by 2 community hospitals, the Robinson and Ballymoney and the Dalriada and Ballycastle. And while my colleague had twice as long to speak, he could afford to go into twice as much detail. So, can I just say that I have supported and been on record as supporting the efforts to protect and build upon all these local facilities, and I will continue to make the case for equality and access for the people of North Antrim. I know that the Health Minister is currently studying the report on the future of health services from led by Professor Bengoa, and I look forward to hearing the Minister's views on how we as a society can secure and improve health service delivery across the full spectrum of health provision. And that approach will require careful nourishment by securing and building on the strengths
to draw his remarks to a close.
in our current provision, and we can deliver better outcomes for the people and ensure that our health service works for the people and makes our lives better. This is a difficult task given the finite budget and require parties across the floor in this House to continue to achieve
The member's
this.
time is up.
Okay.
I call
If she could comment on the importance of international relations in terms of our economic development.
Well, it is critically important that we continue to go across the world to sell Northern Ireland as a good place, not only to invest in, but also to visit as well. And I'm pleased to say that the Economy Minister is currently in the Middle East, continuing to build those links that have been developing over a period of time now. And of course, Invest Northern Ireland have a range of offices right across the globe, as well as Tourism Ireland, who, as you know, sell Northern Ireland across the world as a tourist destination. What a story they have to tell now as well, a very positive story about Northern Ireland, about the fact that Titanic Centre is now Europe's leading visitor attraction. How wonderful is that to be able to tell? The fact that the Game of Thrones happens here in Northern Ireland, the multi-award winning Game of Thrones, winning more Emmys than any other programme in history. And as well as that, the fact that Northern Ireland is globally #1 when it comes to financial technology investment. #1 in the world. Now, that's not something you're going to see in an opposition press statement, but it's something I'll talk about all day long.
Call Mr. I passed over Mr. McGuigan for a supplementary. Mr. McGuigan.
Can I just ask the Minister, given that he's growing terms with regard to the new councils and the fact that European funding is essential to councils, can I ask, was there any concern expressed during the meeting with regard to the future of EU funding?
What I said to the councils as we left the meeting, when they said you're going to be our champion, I said I'll be for the champion for the councils who want to invest and do more, who want to borrow and invest and really build their towns and cities and villages. So I am commending the great work that's been done to rationalise councils, but I'm also saying that those who want to take the next step forward, I think they are the people who I would like to really partner in government. EU funding came up at the meeting, raised by some of the representatives from Newry, Mourne and Down. I don't know if I have that order correct. And in relation to peace funding and Interreg funding in particular, Mr. Speaker, because I know that's of grave interest and deep interest to the members, the statement from the British Chancellor, Mr. Hammond, on the 12th of August falls short, as you know, of what I would like to have seen, particularly in relation to peace and Interreg cross-border programmes. What we had from the Chancellor was a commitment that project approvals, which were made and committed in advance of the autumn statement, we know that will be November 23rd. He had said he would underwrite those particular letters of offer and those contracts. I believe that's insufficient because it leaves at risk €1.1 billion for other European funds. It leaves that at risk in the time ahead, and those are contracts which we expect to be signed off post-November. But it's important to say today to all the members that I'm also concerned about the €500 million which was to go out before November 23rd. And I think most of us thought that we had done marvellous work in relation to expediting the application process, that all the bodies had stepped up, including local councils, including the Interreg partners, to ensure this money got out the door. But at present, Mr. Speaker, we have €120 million of letters of offer for cross-border job, environmental and health projects, and they're log-jammed in the system. And if you will, with your permission, Mr. Speaker, if I could, with your permission, The Executive, the Finance Department, especially the EU Peace body, the Interreg panels have all stepped up to expedite these funding applications. In fact, I think they've done Trojan work to speed up the process to ensure money is released to the peacemakers and the bridge builders and the entrepreneurs and the job creators on the ground. But I would respectfully suggest in this House that their efforts need to be matched by the Irish Government, the British Government and the EU Commission. Notwithstanding the grave difficulties surrounding the EU referendum, Mr Speaker, all three of those institutions should commit to releasing this €120 million as soon as possible. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Okay.
I asked the researcher earlier, mistakenly, it's a question for yourself, just with regard to the impact of the Good Friday Agreement, particularly around strand 2s and 3s and relationships that this vote will have or could potentially have across this island and across the islands. The other thing, just quickly as well, I mean, you did say that your direction the direction you've been given is to look at the best possible outcomes for the North. Can I ask, just on the back of that, are you looking at arrangements that will have the North remaining within the EU? And I mean, is there any discussion taking place on the basis of that with, for example, Scotland? And then just lastly, this is going to have an impact on the citizens who live here, and most people seem to suggest that it's going to have a negative impact. I mean, what is the financial number in terms of EU funds or funds to the North put at risk because of this?
Well, picking up the first point, we weren't in the room, so I'm not sure what the researcher was saying in the constitutional position, and I don't think I would be qualified to comment on that anyway. Your second question, which was in and around what possible constitutional arrangements might we be recommending, I don't see that as our role. I think our role is very much to provide advice to ministers on the possible impacts and also the measures that might be taken to address or mitigate some of those. It'll be for ministers to decide what it is they wish to argue for whenever the negotiations begin. So the issue that you referred to there is very much a matter for political discussion. The third point then, just about EU funding. This has been a particular concern for all departments, and my minister has been campaigning very hard to make sure that there will be no loss of spending power, there will be no loss of funding. We are actually in a much better place today following the Chancellor's announcement in the last couple of days that the guarantee which he had given before is going to be extended from the autumn statement up to the point of exit. And our preliminary assessment, and I wouldn't want to be held to this, is that whereas last week we thought that our exposure, our risk, could have been as much as €1 billion, is now much reduced, and it may well be much less than €100 million now. So that has been a welcome reassurance just in the last couple of days.
So in terms of that figure, over what period is that a figure that you're...
That's the programme funding that was at risk for those programmes that were running from 2014 to 2020. Isn't that right?
And with the indulgence, Chair, I mean, there's obviously going to be a bigger impact in specific EU funded programme. We could talk about agriculture, we could talk about finance, we could talk about investment, we could talk about trade. At what point will officials be able to provide a figure of that kind of impact?
Well, the figures I was quoting were in relation to the amount of funds within those specific programmes. In my department, we have a particular concern for the Interreg and the Peace Fund, Peace Programme, and they are largely, the assurance covers all that we were expecting to draw down in the period between 2014 and 2020. I think if you're talking about the potential wider economic impact, that would be a matter for economists to forecast. We at the moment are not producing any forecasts about the impact, but certainly we are working very closely with the Economic Policy Centre in the Ulster University, and I know that they, Neil Gibson's, Professor Neil Gibson's centre, and they are looking at this. Now, they haven't reached any firm conclusions as yet, but I think generally, Neil's view would be that over time, things will sort of even themselves out.